All right. Good morning, everyone. Before we get started, I need someone to make our motion to conduct this meeting electronically, which I understand has been extended through the end of this year. So yay for us.
I can do it.
Go ahead.
I move that the items on the meeting agenda constitute essential business of this committee. Meeting electronically is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans considering the COVID-19 outbreak and any rules conflicting with governors for electronic meetings suspended.
Do I have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Alex. Pull it up. Okay, sorry, technical difficulties here. All right, Abigail, would you please do our roll call, and everyone please acknowledge your presence and vote yes or no on the electronic motion, meeting motion.
Sure. Paula Foster.
Present and yes.
April Calvin.
Present and yes.
And Elena Boyer.
Present and yes.
And Alex Smith.
Present and yes.
And unless I'm missing her, I believe Laura Bermudez is not currently present.
All right then. Well, thank you. Again, good morning. Thanks for being here today on this little chilly morning. We haven't turned the heat on in our house. So I got up this morning. I was like, I have my sweater on. It's cold in here. So hope you're all doing well and had a nice Halloween that was safe but yet fun. Dog apparently had a great time. Ella. Stop. All right. Okay. Can you come get Ella? Thank you. Go. All right. Sorry, interlude. How's everybody doing this morning? Let's just do a check-in, please. Everybody's smiling, at least the ones I can see. So I guess that's good. How you doing, April?
I'm doing well, full of sugar and candy and all the bad stuff. Woke up this morning thinking I am going to the gym, and I did not. I went to Starbucks instead.
Yeah, brilliant. I just, went home. Awesome. Elena, how are you?
I'm doing okay. Just prepping for what this week will behold. So
yeah, there's a part of me that is trying to prep for that, and a part of me that's trying to just, pretend it's not happening and life is going to go on. So, Alex, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. Mostly this daylight saving time is kind of throwing me off.
Yeah, it's good in the mornings, but not so great in the evenings at this point. So. Sorry.
It's going to at least take me a week until I can get back to normal.
All right. Well, we had a lovely weekend. We did our neighborhood did a parade with a jazz marching band down the street for Halloween instead of doing trick or treating door to door. So we set up a table in the neighbor's yard, put the candy on the table, and all stood back and waved. So it was not so bad. It could have been worse. All right. Well, let's start it on our agenda. First thing this morning is we're going to talk about our cold weather plan. And I believe Marian Leibowitz is here. Hey, Mariam, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Thanks for coming and talking to us today. It's nice to see you. It's been a while.
Nice to see you. Yeah, it's nice to see those of you who I've met and worked with, and yeah, it's been quite a year. It's nice to
yes, it has.
And I actually saw this morning that the cold weather cards are in effect today because of the cold weather last night and this morning. So
okay, that's good. That's good to know. Would you real quick, and I think Judy might say this, but since you're talking, the cold weather cards, they're only active when it gets to a certain temperature. Is that right?
That's correct. So the cold weather cards are in effect November 1st through March 31st, when the temperatures drop to 32 degrees or below. And so they're only truly activated on those specific days.
Okay. That's what I thought, but I wasn't 100% sure. All right. Well, Judy, you want to jump in here and let's start talking about the cold weather plan? I know this is going to be a big topic of discussion at the Planning Council meeting later this month. So we should probably talk about it and see if there's anything else that we need to think about before we have the larger discussion in the larger group. So.
And that's kind of my main question, because I feel we have presented the Metro Plan 2 or 3 times, at least twice now at the Homelessness Planning Council. I'm actually curious what questions are mainly still open. But one of the things that I know we have been working on is, and April, you jump in as well. We had this one gap that I was really concerned about, that the Salvation Army is really stepping in and helping out. And that is when families present, when it's we always have a dad with minor children pop up somewhere, and it's after hours. What are we going to do? So the Salvation Army is going to help out with that. The way that's going to work is the entry point when it's cold weather is going to be at the, sorry, I'm not, is that my background noise?
Go ahead.
Okay. The entry point for providers when they come across a family, when the cold weather plan is activated, they need to call the shelter, and there is a line that I will send out today to all the providers. The reason we're not publishing that line is it's the same line that I at one point had. Then we had Sarah Lines that we had hired during cold weather. If any of you remember, it's a coordination line for providers that when they come across people where they need to go. And one of the reasons we make it that way, that because if we were to give out the Salvation Army a phone line, we fear that through COVID, when families are going to be, struggling with rent and everything, if we publish their phone line, they're just going to call there, and it's not going to be directed towards just filling that gap and those emergencies. So that coordination line at the fairgrounds is also going to be the line, and that's why I need to send it out today, that providers will call ahead. If they do canvassing, you call that number, let people know at the shelter how many people to expect that you're about to drop off. This way, it will allow to be like, okay, hold off a little bit. It will allow to manage a little bit of the waiting line just for COVID, social distancing, making it quicker for people once they're, we just want to avoid crowding as people enter the shelter. And then also the other thing is, if you ever get a situation where capacity becomes tight, Metro will know if they need to look at, there's another wing that they can open that if need be, to reach that 250 to 300 capacity. So it's for planning purposes. So those are really the two new aspects of it. I just want to repeat again, single men, single women, couples, people with pets can go to the fairgrounds. If families are come across, they have to go to Nashville Rescue Mission. If that's not possible, just call ahead to that fairgrounds line, and that's for providers that come across, and providers includes also police late at night that come across families, and they can help direct where people need to go, and they will have a number to connect to the Salvation Army that will step in at that point to assist the family get off the streets. And then we have invited Miriam Leibovitz, and also we have Jason Minzer on here as well from Vigo to talk about if there are questions about transportation specifically.
Okay, Judy, I may have missed it or confused. What did you say about the mission?
There's still the main entry point for families, single families with children. They're taking single families with children.
So the mission is taking single families with children. I'm sorry, explain what that means.
Single women with children. It's just
single women with children.
Yeah, they do that year round.
So single
just
women.
We're looking for that family composition that for some reason cannot go to the mission. Where is that gap? And in the past, Roman Inn filled that gap. This year, because of COVID, they cannot do it.
Right. That's what I thought.
Yeah, so we're the Salvation Army is stepping in.
Okay. So the entry point for single women with children is the women's mission, not the one on downtown, correct? Or do they go downtown first?
No, it's the women's mission. They go
That's
directly
what I thought.
one on Rosa Parks Boulevard.
That's what I thought. Okay. Okay. So I know that some of the concerns have been with the family issues, and so this, I think, will take care of that. The other piece, I think, is the transportation. So I'm glad, Miriam, you joined us today. Some of the things that I've heard is, you know, there's a lot of bus passes out there, the bus passes that get activated during cold weather. All that's great. But what happens if people lose those bus passes? What happens if we haven't found people who need those bus passes? I mean, outreach workers can only do so much when it comes to canvassing. What about folks who need to get to the shelter but don't have a bus pass? Is there any way for just to be able to ride the bus to the fairgrounds without actually having a pass when it gets to be a certain temperature?
So thank you. So first of all, I just want to introduce who I am and what my role is with WeGo. My name is
I forgot to say, Miriam. Thank you.
No, you're good. You're good. So my name is Miriam Leibowitz, and I'm the Community Outreach and Engagement Specialist with WeGo Public Transit. I've been working with Judy and Abigail for a little over 3 years now, closing in on 3.5, specifically with the cold weather cards, the cold weather plan, and the connector cards, which are the housing navigator assisted cards, or managed cards, I should say. So there are a number of reasons why what Paula just asked is not feasible. First of all, there's an operational burden that would then be placed on bus drivers who truly cannot be put in a position to ask someone if they're homeless. It's just not, that's not something that we can ask our bus drivers to do. It's not operationally appropriate or feasible, and it puts them in a difficult position. So that is one piece of it. The other piece is between the cold weather cards, which there are 350 of that we've given to Judy's team already this year, and I'm assuming have already started to be distributed. We got them to Judy's team about 2 weeks ago for distribution to begin. In addition to those, there are up to 500 connector cards that are available for use each year for participants in that program. On top of that, we also have provided 1,000 one-ride passes so far this winter for individuals who are leaving the shelters, the emergency overflow shelter in the morning, the Metro shelter. That's something that we've provided for the last couple of years. But what we have noticed is that there has been a downward trend, a continuing downward trend in ridership for the cold weather cards over the last 3 years, and decrease in the number of one-ride passes that we have that have been issued when the shelters are opening up back, when they're closing in the morning. So with that, there doesn't appear to be a demonstrated need for additional cards or additional rides to be provided. That the need has not been shown to be there.
Thank you, Miriam. I appreciate that. So what does happen if someone loses the card? Can they get another one?
That is right now, we always in the past had held some back for that, so providers would come to us. This year, providers wanted more. So traditionally, we would give out 250 cards in November 1st, and then have another 100 cards for providers if they needed it, especially around the January or when it gets really cold. This year, providers and through the shelter committee asked us that there's more for need, and they wanted more cards up front. So I think we have about maybe 50 to 75. I'm sorry, I did not check this morning how many we're holding back, so that if somebody needs a replacement card, that there's a handful of those. Yes. Or if
Okay. So what happens in January when outreach workers are out there seeing that there's a need and there are no more cards to distribute?
Last year, we did not get any requests. The other thing, don't forget, there are about 450 potential connector cards. We have the efforts around the rapid rehousing going on. So hopefully there's going to be more outreach on the street that actually, as they're working towards housing with people, utilize those cards. So when people are still out on their way to, because they're not going to get housing from one day to the next, that outreach workers are actually utilizing that opportunity as well. And those are annual cards. They can be used at any day, not just when it's cold.
And I do want to add that the reports that I get monthly from Judy's team indicate that the connector card program has never been maxed out. So it's really up to the outreach workers to be able to get people involved in that program. And as Judy just said, that card can be used year round.
Okay. And these are questions I've gotten over the last couple of weeks that I wanted to make sure that we were addressing. Again, I think it's important for the Planning Council to have a good understanding of how all this works. If they, get asked questions and that sort of thing. I mean, I agree that that's a lot of cards, and I'm not sure if we're going to use them all. I think one of my fears is that when outreach workers are out there finding folks and giving out the cards, and we run out of cards, and then we don't have any more cards, even though they may not all be used, they're out there. And so what happens when we run out of those? But we'll see. Judy, if you say that hasn't happened in the past, then maybe maybe it won't happen again this year. Who knows? I mean, this year has been so crazy in every respect that I have no idea what's going to happen. I don't think any of us do. So, okay then.
And one of the things also to confirm, we do continue to have the shelter committee, and that's an issue that does come up, and it's just communication. We need to keep the communication going. That's the most important thing.
So one thing that I will say that I think is what is concerning folks at this point is that, years past, there's been a lot of direct canvassing at night, taking people to the shelter, hence making bus passes unnecessary. This year, that is going to be significantly less, in addition to the fact that folks who were, in years past housed in the winter via room at the inn will not be able to be housed via room in the inn this year because their capacity is at a third of what it used to be for this year. So again, I think that's where some of the concern around bus passes and getting people to the shelter has come in from some of the outreach workers. They recognize that they're not going to be able to do the same things they've done in the past. Hence, the need for bus transportation might be higher this year than it has been in years past. I just want us to be thinking about that and potentially have a plan for expanding if we need to, and be able to talk about that. So Miriam, if January rolls around and we've given out all the passes and we're still finding people who need passes, is there an opportunity to have more cold weather passes distributed?
I think that we can certainly talk about that if that comes to pass. We're in regular communication with Judy and her team, and if that's the case, we're happy to revisit it at that time.
Okay, and that's right. And I think that's one of the reassurances people just need to hear. And again, we don't know. I mean, and I think that's what's driving some of the questions that I know that I've gotten, is since we're and Open Table is a perfect example. Open Table has had multiple volunteers, multiple vans driving all over the city, bringing people in at cold weather nights. We're not going to be doing that this year. We've got one van, and we're going to try to strategically figure out, which is my next conversation, figure out how to make the most of that. But it's definitely going to be different than it has been in years past. And so I'm anticipating the need for bus passes is going to be higher, or else people are just not going to make it to the shelter, and that's not a good thing either. So as long as we know that we can work on it, if we run out and need some more, we can come back and potentially, I'm not saying we will, but potentially, be able to meet that need, and that'll be great. So, Judy, you want to?
Yes, Rico has been a fantastic partner. They always respond very quickly when I take any of these questions, and the shelter committee has had these questions. So I go to Miriam. She responds within the same day. It's going to, they always look, and the leadership looks into what's feasible, what not, and we get a very thoughtful response like you just got. So Rico has been a fantastic partner, and I have to say under this leadership, it really opened opportunities for transportation that we've never had before. So thank you, Rico.
Yes, I would like to echo that. I know that's been a huge help over the last few years, and I think, Miriam, you've been a big part of that. So I want to personally thank you for the work that you're doing with transit and helping us out when we need it. I do appreciate it. So anything else on transportation? I know I dominated that conversation. Alex, Elena, April, do you guys have any questions?
Yeah, my question was centered around cold patrol. You answered that with the downsizing to one van. I was wondering if there's other outreach agencies that may be willing to increase their efforts. Like, I know Tiffany works a lot with Yay Packs and some of those others, that may be willing to step in, because the population that Cold Patrol reaches out to are not necessarily the population that will get on a bus or reach out. They really need to be nudged and encouraged to take this ride for safety. So I don't know, Judy, if you have like a spreadsheet or anything that gathers more information from some of the smaller, maybe less known outreach efforts.
So, April, before you answer that, Judy, I want to tell you that was a beautiful segue into my next issue that I wanted to talk about around cold weather. So, because we know that there are a lot of small organizations out there that do winter canvassing and have people out there bringing people to shelters, as well as the Missions Cold Patrol and Operation Stand Down has done some stuff. So one of the things, and most years in the past, we've all just been out there, trying to find our people. Right. And, Open Table had 2 or 3, vans, and they'd go to different places and, pick up people multiple times and bring them back. So one of the things that I want to know, and we probably should have thought about this sooner, but I don't think we did, is there a way that we can coordinate the efforts of all the outreach canvassing programs and have us all work together, as opposed to everyone doing their own thing? Operation Stand Down has 2 vans that they're going to be sending out in the evenings, so they have a pickup place at, this place and this place. And then Open Table has one, so our pickup place is over here. Instead of all of us trying to do all of the city all at once, if we can coordinate our efforts and work together, then Gideon's Army is going to pick up here, and we're going to pick up. You see what I'm saying? I wonder if there's a way that we can reach out to everyone who's going to be doing that kind of canvassing and coordinate pickup spots, so that one organization that's diminished in what they've done in the past is still not trying to do it all. And if that makes sense, or if anyone else has been talking about that. Judy, has anyone been talking about doing that?
Not this year. In the past, Lindsay Cranks has had volunteer efforts and coordination, and that's really been Open Table looking at the canvassing. The outreach groups like Mental Health Co-op, others have really focused more on the day outreach to encourage people to have plans in place, but not really through, Canvas specific. And one of the efforts we have encouraged is also to coordinate with downtown police precinct, because they have been doing regular canvassing in the downtown area so that there wouldn't be too much overlap there. But no, we have not had this coordinated effort. And frankly, as staff, I do not have the capacity to take this on. So it would have to be a nonprofit. I'm happy to help set up a meeting, but I cannot. We need to also at the same time, the rapid rehousing dollars are flowing, and we need to really get people off the streets through that. And that's where I'm going to put my staff and resources into place.
Well, that makes perfect sense. So I guess one of the things, and I will talk to the staff at Open Table and see where they're at with it, but potentially we might need your help in identifying other organizations that do some of this. I know that, and again, I know Lindsay has done some of this in the past, but in the past, again, what everyone's done, we've got plans, we're going to be in this area, and what I'm talking about is much more of a coordinated, pickup spots. Everyone knows where the outreach workers then know where the pickup spots are. Doesn't matter if it's an Open Table pickup spot or an OSD pickup spot or like I said, the Giving Needs Army, whoever's doing it. We know that if they're in this area, you go to this parking lot and they're going to be doing pickups at that parking lot. And so it doesn't have to be my organization that picks up my folks. It's anybody there. And that's I guess what I'm trying to talk about. So all those folks that do that, let me see if we can get the team at Open Table to do some coordination of that. And if so, then we can put that out as part of the cold weather plan. It's, these organizations will be doing pickups at this spot whenever it's this temperature. And so I think that maybe we can figure out how to make that work.
Yeah, and send somebody to me. Susan and Lindsay have already the same list I have. We're exchanging contacts once in a while on outreach, but happy to help us with the contact information.
Okay. Anything from anybody else? April, did that answer some of your questions?
Perfect.
I have a question. It's more of a question of if somebody can tell me the historical kind of way things have been done. What have been the partnerships with churches? And I know that a lot of them will have church vans and they'll be picking up too. Do they coordinate well with the outreach workers and the other housing organizations, or how does that work? And is there room for that kind of partnership? I mean, it's getting late, but for them to be involved in that coordination in those pickup spots.
Go ahead, Judy. You can take this one.
Yeah. So Room in the Inn, as you know, is based on congregational relationships. And they have been working very, very hard this summer to try to recruit congregations, and they're struggling. I have reached out personally to a lawyer to give me some input on how we can utilize churches better, because they're empty buildings basically, and how I can help. And there's some liability and legal issues because they do not have church. They don't have mass or you know what I mean, worshiping. They don't, we've looked into that. There's really it's a struggle. It's a struggle, and I'm not sure how we can better engage them at this point. Then it's a struggle right now all around because of COVID.
So Elena, as Judy said in the past, Room at the Inn has been the best in utilizing faith-based congregations and Open Table as well. And what has happened this year is there's about a third of the churches that have done Room in the Inn in the past years that are able to do it this year. And it's because none of the congregations, let me use the East Side Christian Church as an example. They've been doing Room at the Inn for a long time, and they have not been meeting, and they have decided that they're not going to house people this year, and they're trying to figure out, then what they can do, and they're probably just going to donate the money that they set aside to do that. They're just going to give it to Room at the Inn or to someone, as opposed to being able to open up their church and keep people once a week, I think is what they used to do. I know this because my mother-in-law goes to church there, and she was talking to me about it. And this has been the issue for Room in the Inn all year long. With COVID, there are congregations that they're not meeting in person, so they don't want to open their facilities to people because of risk. In addition to the fact that all of the churches, when they take folks through Room in the Inn, the church's staff that they have congregants who come and they feed people, they stay with them, and are there to kind of oversee what goes on. They don't have people to do that because no one is volunteering this year to do it. So they can't provide the same thing that they provided in the past because they just don't have the capacity to do it because of COVID. So that's why Room in the Inn, I think, what is it, Judy? They're down to, again, about a third of capacity, and they only have enough congregations to house somewhere between 75 and 100 people. And so they've decided that because of that, they're only going to take single men. So that, again, that leaves a tremendous amount of people who have every year for the last several years have depended on being able to go to Room at the Inn and sleep in churches that are not going to be able to do that this year. And again, that is what raised my concern about canvassing and bus passes, and wondering if that's going to be a bigger need this year than it has been in the past. So in years past, Open Table has also used churches to do warming shelters. They haven't done that in the last couple of years, I don't think, but it's the same thing. There are no churches are not out there allowing this to be done in their facilities because they don't have the capacity to do that. So as much as they would want to, and I know that there are churches that are struggling with the decision not to do it, but because they all, it's part of their ministry, but they can't do it. So this leaves a big hole, particularly in, again, Room in the Inn, but also in canvassing, because I think there has been a lot of churches that have gone out to help with canvassing, but they just don't feel like they can take the risk this year to do that. So I know that that table is continuing to try to work with some churches to see what capacity they might have. But again, we're all concerned about this. I'm concerned as the executive director of Open Table right now. We go out and recruit churches to move people from place to place, and then someone gets exposed to COVID. What liability and risk does that put on us? And all of us are struggling with this because we all want to do it, but we're afraid to do it at this point. So I'm not sure if that was probably a really long-winded answer to your question. But.
No, I think that's helpful. I appreciate that. It's just kind of access to their vans, maybe not just housing in their shelters, but no, I appreciate that. Thank you.
But even access to their vans puts liability on them, because then they don't have. Right. A lot of places won't just give you their van, because that then puts a liability on them, because they're not providing the driver. And it's complicated. And again, it's not because they don't want to, it's because none of us have that capacity. Your cat is cracking me up behind your shoulder, by the way.
She claws at me all the time, so I'm just like she's sleeping right now.
All right.
I appreciate it.
I have a question. Judy, I saw in the paper that Room in the Inn purchased that new building. I know this is like really early, right? You just purchased a building. You probably have to go in and rehab it a little bit. Do we know when that will be up and running?
I know they are rehabbing.
Yeah, it is up, and I think I just saw on Facebook some pictures. So they're ready to activate that.
Are they? I didn't know it was ready.
I think so. Yes, I just saw something over the weekend. They're all very close to being ready. Yes.
They're using it as an overnight shelter, correct?
Yes. It's so they have 2 central locations in their Room in Inn program. The other thing also, they're doing more. They're serving single men this year and taking reservations through their day center. So it's not their usual ticketing system, which is another issue. One of the things I do need to point out, we do have a shelter committee, and all these discussions are happening there and have been since August. So they've been working really hard on identifying the gaps, and we should have a meeting next, I think, I don't have my calendar open, so
That's okay.
It's not this week after. Yeah.
So can we ask Kathy to come to the planning council meeting to give a report herself?
Yes. And she has been, I think, the last 2 times she has been on there as well. So she'll be happy to do that.
Right. That's what I thought. And again, I know it's kind of beating a dead horse in some ways, Judy, and I recognize that. it's just, we talk about it before it gets here, but when it gets here, everyone's like, what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? And I just want people I want people to remember that we have been working on this for a while and we do have answers. There have been some gaps. We've been working on those gaps. We have a great committee that's been, talking about these issues. We've got partners like WeGo, and we just need to kind of continue to reiterate what the plan is, because I want people to know we have plans. They may not be perfect. They may be different than they have been in the past, but we've been working on it, and these issues have not been lost on us. And I want people to I want to make sure people understand that. So.
Yeah, one of the things I want to ask you as the executive committee to stress and actually shift the conversation. We basically have a 20-night conversation and a cold night conversation, but I would like to start to see that much enthusiasm around housing and housing conversations from the Planning Council, because it's a year-round issue. More people die during warmer months than during winter months. There have been studies done on that. It's just, homelessness is year-round, and if you can actually gather this energy and have these conversations around housing, that will be fantastic.
That's a great point, and thank you very much, Judy. All right, any other questions around?
Hi everyone. Sorry,
Hey,
I
Laura.
had some issues connecting, but I've been listening in. Hey, good morning.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. So I have a quick just thought, and making sure that it is cohesive, or up to kind of code with what we can publish, what we can't publish, so on and so forth. But it sounds like, if it's not already created, Judy, some kind of an FAQ and talking points that's just standard across the board would be really helpful. And stop me if something's already out there, but that might help to provide to the planning committee, to provide to our community partners, to say exactly, Paula, what you said. We have thought of all these things. Here are the questions we know you have, because we had them ourselves, and here are some answers. And then I would love to include in that, Judy, the comment that you just made, right? And remember, the number one way for us to avoid this emergent situation is to make sure we have people permanently housed all year long. But I think, just thinking of that a little proactively and providing something in writing would potentially, slow down some of the myriad questions and the ongoing conversation.
Your observation is the pin in my point here. And the reason that we need to talk about it is because that information has been sent out, and as a part of the Planning Council, you probably got it. But Jed didn't notice, really. And that's the thing. It has been sent out, and I know outreach workers are looking at it, and that's people who really need it, because they're the ones who are doing the work. But the rest of us see things come in our email, and we are so inundated right now with computer and email and Zoom. And oh my neighbor, her Halloween costume, she had a box on her head. She was a Zoom meeting. I mean, this is what our life has been these days, and we're missing those kinds of things, which is why talking about it, reiterating what we've done, reminding people that there is a plan and that it is written down, and there are phone numbers that you're gonna get, and information that it's out there. So we're gonna make sure that people remember, we know that it's out there. So. Anything else?
That's fair, and we could probably look at how to make that communication a little more effective, right? Because even us members of the Planning Council are missing it. That means that we can certainly think of a way to create a communication or marketing kind of campaign, so that we're really being in people's face that want to know. And then none of us have an excuse to say, wait, I didn't see anything.
I on that note, I have presented a PowerPoint to the Planning Council. There is a website that has been announced over and over. That's coldweathernashville.com. There is a phone number with information line that I just updated, and I update all that stuff at 9 each morning. I mean, at this point, if the planning council, I mean, if I would, I would actually love to talk about what communication needs to be, but make it a bigger issue on solutions, on housing focus, including, it's like, so how does then the planning council want communication? If what we've done around this doesn't stick, then we have a bigger issue. That's just where I am, and it's worse than looking at that. And I think that's part of also the strategic plan for the executive committee to discuss what that looks like. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. Anything else on cold weather plan?
Yeah. Before we
Alex.
move on, I did have two questions, but then it got dropped down to one. Then it got turned into one complete big question. Where's the youth is going to stay in this? Because I know that Oasis and Room to End, especially for the youth and the LGBT community, they deal with churches when it gets cold. So if we have a third of the access for the churches to help out to shelter, and that's mostly their primary way to shelter these kids that's on the streets, what happens to them?
So, Alex, that's a great question. I'm glad you brought it up. There are a couple of organizations, Oasis being one, that is specific to youth, homeless youth. One of them is Launchpad. Launchpad has, starting at the beginning of the COVID stuff and, into February, beginning of March, they began housing the youth in hotel rooms. And so they have actually, they've actually been able to secure enough places, hotel rooms, to be able to utilize that. I think funding for them is an issue as they continue to try to do that, because it's a lot more expensive to do that than it is to use churches to do warming shelters. But they are committed to trying to continue to do that this year. Judy, do you have any other information around youth? And they're specific also, Alex, around LGBTQ issues and making sure that it is a welcoming and affirming experience.
No, nothing to add. Again, coldweathernashville.com has links to the organizations that do that. There are links to Nashville Rescue Mission, Room in the Inn, Launchpad, and looking at the different populations. There is the community plan is on there that breaks down what each organization does for which population. So it's all on there.
Okay. All right. Does that answer your question, Alex?
Yes, it does.
All right, thank you. And again, we know that this is all not perfect and that there are people that are going to get missed, but I want to compliment Judy and her team on getting all the information together on the resource. The shelter committee has done a great job at identifying all these questions. And I know Judy and her team have been working on it diligently for the last several months. And she's right. This is not just a cold weather issue. Getting people off the streets and getting them into some kind of appropriate housing is what we are trying to do, and it's a bigger picture than just the cold weather months. Although everyone seems to get motivated and moving around cold weather. So, all right then. If there's nothing else on the cold weather plan, we can move on.
Well, yeah, Judy, with the police officers that's going around and asking our homeless brothers and sisters on if they want to go to a shelter or not, have there been training on how to talk to the homeless community? And are they dressed completely in uniform or not? Because if I was on the street still, and even though the officer is asking me, hey, do you want to go to a shelter tonight? I can help you get there. If I see that officer in uniform, I'm gonna be very timid and walk the other way, especially how this year has been.
Judy, can I respond?
Yes, yeah, go ahead, April. And then
so for the last 5 months, maybe, I don't know, my days are off, so don't quote me on that. The police officers that work the beat downtown have been riding on the canteen, the Salvation Army's canteen, feeding and serving and journaling with a lot of these participants that are in the downtown area. They know them by name. And it's been a welcoming experience. So they all come fully dressed. The only difference is they don't all come down with their patrol cars. So I don't think that because they sometimes tell our staff where to go if we're, or they have people that they know of that they've seen the downtown. So I think that collaboration and Chief Howie's willingness to want to get this right and want to do better, I think that's kind of turned the curve a little bit for the population downtown. Now, I can't speak to the outside surrounding counties, but that's been my experience with the officers. We went through some trauma-informed care training with them, some sensitivity training with them. We've worked really hard just to make sure that they know how to encounter and greet our folks downtown.
And one of the things, Alex, I have been in touch with Interim Chief Drake to talk in general about interactions. At this point, we're just looking the leadership, the police leadership, where that's going to end up and continue conversations.
Alex, but that's again.
I'm just worried, especially how this year has been, and especially with the police brutality that's been going on and stuff like that. It's great that there is officers that our people can get to know and see them on a regular basis when it comes to feeding and stuff. But it just concerns me, especially with the cold weather that's about to blow in super heavy, that, sometimes people have slip-ups and end up forgetting. So those are my concerns.
Well, and again, Alex, I don't disagree with you, and I think that your concerns are valid. I hope, Nashville has actually done a fairly good job with officers and around homelessness and their engagement, and we'll kind of hope that continues. And again, I think that no one can predict what will happen in any particular situation, but I've always been impressed with the officers in Nashville that have helped with issues around homelessness. I know that there have been some that have done canvassing, and it's yeah. I think we're about in as good a place as we can be. Also recognizing that there's going to continue to be that trepidation around interactions with officers. But thank you for that, and something that I know Judy and her team are constantly also thinking about. All right, guys, I have another meeting in 10 minutes, but I told them I might be a little bit late, but I want to see if we can go through the rest of this agenda fairly quickly if we can. So the next item was a referendum statement. We talked about putting out a statement from the Homelessness Planning Council on a position around the potential referendum on repealing the property tax increase. I will be perfectly honest and say that I haven't gotten to that yet, but I will this week to put out a draft of that, and I'll get it to Judy's team and she can distribute it before the Planning Council meeting. Basically what we talked about is, we all recognize that while no one wants to pay more taxes, the potential for repealing this tax increase is going to have devastating impact on city services all across the board. And it would put all of us in an incredibly difficult position, particularly those of us who work with vulnerable populations and the folks that we work with. So we are going to take the position that the referendum is not in the best interest of Nashville as a whole, and we want to make sure that we are vocal in opposing that referendum. So I will work on that statement and get it to Judy's team to disseminate, and then we can take a look at it at the Planning Council meeting for their input and approval. Does that sound good? Fabulous. Strategic plan. We're always talking about strategic plan, and we always feel like we're not where we need to be. So where are we and what do we need to do?
So Laura Bermudez and I, we have met on Friday. I'm going to pitch it right to her due to time. And so if we also collected some reports from the chairs. I sent it out to you yesterday, so I have it in front of you because it was so small. We created a executive summary template from the committee reports. We have not as much of reports back from the chairs as I had hoped. So I'm going to work on that a little bit more and push on that. Laura, if you could jump in for time purposes.
Yeah, sure. So, Judy and I started looking at the work on the strategic plan of the executive committee. And the first thing that we identified that we need to resolve is the nomination and standing out of the Resource Development Committee. So the purposes of today, wanted to just spend a couple minutes with this group walking through the purpose of the Resource Development Committee. I know you guys looked at that, agreed on the objectives and outcomes, and I've got like a little worksheet, if somebody can give me the ball, that I can show for us to just work through, you know, who is it, what are who are the type of people we want on this committee, so we can all come up with a plan to go out, identify or ask individuals to be on the committee, chair the committee, and shoot for a date to kick it off, so that the large list of items that belong to the Resource Development Committee can start being addressed on that strategic plan. So if somebody can hand me the ball, because I don't think I can take it in this WebEx, I am happy to pull that up. And in the meantime, does anybody have any questions or comments? Cool. Well, let me share my screen. All right. And I apologize. I usually give a lot more context, but in the trying to maximize our time, we're just going to jump right into it unless anybody is really lost or confused. So what I've got up here on the screen, if everyone can see it, is the purpose and objectives and outcomes that were reviewed and agreed upon in the last meeting. And really what I want to do is start thinking about some of those skills and relationships / representation that we identified, wanting to be part of members of the committee, and start thinking about who is it that could potentially bring that skill or that relationship to the table. So for example, I just threw this out as an example for an analytical mindset. I thought, hey, maybe, you know, we could leverage a Vanderbilt grad student that's looking for a project to work on. They usually know how to, you know, analyze data and have a great background in this space. Let's see if we could identify somebody who can serve as a member of this committee. So that's just an example. As you can see, I've written down the row, the skills that we had identified. So analytical mindset, experience in financial analysis and budgeting, experience in data analysis, health and public policy background, and then relationship and representation. These were, you know, what are the type of relationships we would want members to have, or, you know, what type of representation of the community would we want to be present on this committee in order for us to properly achieve those objectives and outcomes that we defined. Now, you all are welcome to throw out some other skills or relationships that we want to include here, but I really, really want to, in the time we have, start getting into, okay, so who would be the right person to serve on this committee, or who are the right, what's the right group of people to serve on this committee, so we can start reaching out and asking people if they'd be willing to participate. So I'll pause there.
Laura, this is Elena. One of the things that has come up recently in the data committee, and we were hoping that this could be work with the resource, but challenges around the inventory. And after we had some expertise from Matt Hurd talk about it, just having those partnerships with landlords that have access to software that we currently don't have. There's cost related to getting that sort of software, but it really kind of was a linchpin to making it work for Open Doors, but just kind of making sure those relationships are present so we have access to resources that we currently don't have, I think are going to be really important to building inventories, and would give us the support as the data committee to meet those objectives. So just really making sure they're a part of this as well. And that may be part of the business community stakeholders you were talking to, but I just really want to impress upon that, because that's where our committee's really stuck with our objectives.
And you said access to what type of software, Elena?
God, I don't remember the name of this. That it's like what real estate agents have and lenders and landlords have, where you can actually look at availability of units. I don't know the names of them, but it might have been included in our notes from subject matter experts, so I can share that.
So perhaps maybe it's one of those subject matter experts would be a good representative on this committee.
I mean, absolutely. If we're talking about building resources for us to use and for housing, and again, to Judith's point about showing that same energy around housing, we really need access to those.
What did you guys call them? I'm sure it's not housing subject matter experts.
I'm sorry, that's a training and technical assistance term, but yeah, just subject matter experts. It was Matt Hurd from Open Door. I don't know if that's what you were asking.
Yeah, I didn't want to put housing SMEs and then people think like something totally different. So I'll just put housing SMEs like Matt Hurd, and maybe we can think about it. It could be Matt, it could be somebody similar.
Who's Matt? Who is Matt?
Well,
Okay.
he's the guy with Open Doors Atlanta, and there's actually under other business, I wanted to update you on where that stands. He's not in Nashville right now, and it will be sometime. We have to go another route with the phase 1 on that, but there is THDA housing software that we're working with THDA on. There is some other opportunities to look at where this type of resource is that Elena talks about, and where we access that. So I think we can, we don't need to look to Matt Hurd right now. We need to look at what Elena talks about with where we locally find that information, who has it, and get that person, get those resources here.
Okay. And Elena, to your point, we certainly don't need a person in each of these rows or in each of these cells. It could be that this person also ends up being a representative from the business community. That's totally fine. This is kind of a list where we said, these are the type of skills, or these are the relationships or representation that we need in order to have a robust committee. And if we can get like a 2-for-1, awesome. If we can't, then, we want to work with what we have. Any other thoughts or any other?
So, isn't there a group here in town that's, for lack of a better explanation, a group of leaders of the philanthropic community that meet on a regular or somewhat regular basis, that from all sorts of foundations? Should we look, in terms of relationship with potential funders, should we look at having someone from potentially that group as part of this committee? I don't know what it's called.
Andy, do you know?
It's the Donors Fund. It's called the Donors Fund. It includes First Foundation, Memorial Foundation. I can't name all of them. Yes, but the main foundations are on that Donors Fund. Yes.
So maybe a representative from them. And from that perspective, if you're looking at, relationships with business community and stuff, maybe there's a similar kind of group. Maybe someone from the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, I like it. Other thoughts? What do you guys think? I mean, I honestly think if we could get a Vanderbilt grad student from like the Peabody School, Beth obviously has an in there. I'm sure there's at least, a grad student or two that would love to be involved in this type of work and put it in their portfolio and add it to their research. So I think that would potentially give us somebody who can do a lot of the data analysis, the budgeting, all that kind of working in Excel sheet type of stuff.
Okay. I would say the same thing for the health and public policy background, university representation from that perspective, a School of Public Health, not even a grad student, but a professor potentially, staff member.
We could maybe ask Beth if she has anybody she would recommend.
I to that point, to follow up on Paula's point, it's just kind of also thinking someone policy. The law school at Vanderbilt does have some health law or community law. I don't know the exact area, but that might be helpful.
Jumping down to
I know Peabody has their health and public policy focus in their Peabody program, but we can certainly ask about the law school as well.
Okay. Same thing from jumping down to the faith leader representation. There have been a lot of churches in Nashville for a long time that have been very committed to homeless services. I don't know all of them, but I can find out who might be a good representation from that one, so you can put me down on that one. I have an in with the people who know them now, so.
Okay. Anything else? There was one here about relationships across service providers or someone who understands where those service providers are coming from. Anybody, any thoughts there?
You know who might be good there? I'm thinking of a person as opposed to an idea.
It could be a person.
What about Sean Muldoon? He's been around this community for a long time and comes at it from a very broad perspective, and has relationships with a lot of people. Just an idea.
I don't know, Sean, so I'll open it up. Thoughts, comments from the group?
April, what do you think?
I think Sean would be good. Have we reached out to what is it, Tennessee Jobs or any of those, like career-oriented kind of programs? I'm not sure if Sean's role at OSD, and if he is in that role of helping in that department, then definitely.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's SEAN and then MULDON.
OON.
Okay. And then April, is there anything you wanted me to add here? Do you guys want to look first at Sean, and then if he's not the right fit, look elsewhere?
Yeah.
Anybody have a relationship with Sean or that group and want to reach out?
I'll ask him.
Okay.
Right. So right now, if I'm looking at this, I'm seeing the potential for some type of university, either grad student, potentially professor, maybe somebody from the Vandy Law School. So that could be one or two people, depending on if we find a really strong health and public policy background person, and then somebody else who's really strong in that analytics space, that we say, let's go ahead and have both. Because it is, I'm thinking that those skill sets are also going to require a fair amount of investment and time. So it might make sense to have more than one person with those skill sets, so the work doesn't, end up on just one person. I'm also looking into a representative from something like the Donors Fund, a representative from the Chamber of Commerce, looking to see if we can find some type of housing software, housing SME, and then also a faith leader representative. Does that sound fairly comprehensive? Obviously we might find that we have representatives, more than one representative in this space or individual in this space that fits the committee. But I think if we got 2 on the top and then the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we're talking like 7. That seems like a pretty decent committee size. I don't know if we'd want to go a whole lot larger than that, right? Okay, I'm seeing some nodding heads, so yes. So let's talk about next steps. And does anybody feel strongly? We've got Paula's on to ask for two representatives. We've got a note to ask Beth for recommendation. I don't know if Judy, you want to take that since she's on the planning council and it. Okay. Does anybody feel strongly or have any connections for, personal relationships where they want to reach out on either of these 3 open? So we've got the Donors Fund representative, Chamber of Commerce, and then that housing software need.
I can ask the Donors Fund, and if somebody has a stronger connection to the chamber, that would be great. I do have one, but yeah, if somebody has very strong relationship there, that's fine.
Not to step back for a second, but the diverse representation, can we look at Meharry, Fisk, some of those North Nashville kind of organizations? And, as I'm thinking about Meharry, that does have a public health, I think it's public health. I have some contacts at my previous job. I'm not sure if it'll open up anything, but I'm happy to try.
And on that, Elena, even with, if you have anybody who has relationships with TSU, FISC, Meharry, also data analysis and background, that would be fantastic as well.
Okay.
I'm happy to, I have a close coworker who is a FISC alumni. I'm happy to ask her if she knows of anybody or has any connections there that we can explore, if that's helpful.
And to be clear, so is there going to be some language we can share? Or can I just take those top bullet points to talk about what this committee would be about?
You can also look at the strategic plan. There's quite a few assignments there of what the goals are. If, you know, so yes.
Great.
Okay, so Judy, for the sake of time, I'm just going to put you here for Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
Since it sounds like you've probably got the most. And then what about that housing software piece? Oh, is this something where we want to go back to that list of SMEs from the data committee first? Or is there somebody that someone else knows locally that might be a good fit?
That's something that I think if I can get with Elena and wrap my head around what the conversation was, and then look at where we can, yes, we go from there.
Okay.
I can share with you our notes from the meeting. It was really helpful.
All right. So just gonna say that this is all the same. So do we feel good about the next steps as far as identifying individuals? Is there anything we're missing? No? All right, so let's talk timing. Let me go back to my little plan here. What do you guys think? I like when I project plan, I like to identify kind of my kickoff date or my, due date, and then we can work back from there. What's a realistic, pencil it in type of timing for kicking off this committee? Because we know we've got to identify these individuals, potentially ask them, identify that chair, set a date to meet, and then actually meet. So Judy, do you have any strong thoughts, or does anybody else have any thoughts as to what's a realistic but kind of soon date, type of date to get this group kicked off so we can march toward that?
I'm thinking if the goal is for them to get up and started in January, you really, if everybody follows up as quickly as possible, so within the next 2 weeks, to really try to reach out to and have some ideas, so that we can prepare.
Yeah.
People also need to be contacted. They need to be agreeing to it. They need to know what they agree to, and then so there's quite some work. If we can, next 2 weeks, there needs to be that outreach done and get some ideas of people, actual people on the community.
Okay. So can we all commit to reaching out to our first round of contacts in the next, maybe in the next week, so that we can hopefully hear back from them within that 1 to 2 weeks, and then follow up directly with Judy? Does that work with you? Follow up offline via email with you to let you know what we've heard back. And then if you want to just send out maybe in 2 weeks, this with like a new column of, where we're at, perhaps, is it too late if when we come back together, we finalize that list, or do we need to do it offline?
I want to hear what actually you guys are thinking. I know.
So the executive committee meeting will be in December. So that means we would finalize the list, say, okay, these are all the people. Then the formal invitation. I mean, obviously those people will at least know that they're, being asked or considered, but the formal invitation would go out after that in early December. Of course, we've got all the holidays and all that fun stuff going on. I think that gives us time to kick off in January. It may not be like the week of January 1st per se, but I think it can be done.
So I would think January is realistic. Maybe not the 1st of January, maybe after our executive meeting in January. So I think trying to make sure we have a list of people by our next meeting in December is great. We may not be able to finalize that list at that point, so we may have to finalize the list in January and then get the meeting started. I think we can leave the timeline at this and see where we're at in December. If that makes sense. Just my thought.
Yeah, and I feel like if we get together in December with a decent list, if we're all able to follow up with Judy offline, get her kind of comments and next steps, when we come back together in December, to your point, Paula, we might not leave with a final list, but we could potentially leave with a good enough list that we could circle back and finish up offline. It wouldn't necessarily require lots and lots of extra conversation. So I think, I think sometime in January is realistic. And if we can keep to this timeline, we could actually kick it off. So unless there are any other questions or items that we need to discuss or open concerns or whatever it is, I'm going to hand back the floor so we can wrap up. Awesome. So Judy, I will send this over to you. I think everybody's got their marching orders, but if you could just follow up with the groups, everybody has this on paper, I think that'd be great. And then we'll continue the conversation.
Elena, thank you very much for all that. Anybody have anything else? All right. Let's move to the ESG update with Heather.
Hey, everybody.
Hey, Heather. Thanks for joining us and being patient.
Sure. You're welcome. I multitask pretty well. It was all about Nashville, though. I was sending emails to Nashville. So the piece that I wanted to make sure y'all heard today, directly related to some of the conversation about housing and shelter and all those kinds of things, is we and I was just looking at the numbers that Dion sent on Friday, Judy. We have a couple of hundred units getting ready to be able to be leased for permanent housing for the housing surge that we're getting ready to do. So that's really good news. So literally 225 units that we are working on getting long-term leases with properties for. And literally this afternoon, we are meeting with the rapid rehousing providers, and there are going to be 52 referrals for 52 households to start moving toward occupying 52 of those units within the next month, if not more quickly than that. So we are moving as fast as we can, and are going to start moving really fast over the next 3 to 4 months. So I anticipate that we're going to house at least 100 people a month over the next 4 months. With if these rooms continue to open the way that we think, units open the way that we think they will. So I know April is very well aware of this because she just hired a bunch of people to help make this happen. Yeah, very exciting. So agencies have staffed up. We've been working with the coordinated entry staff on the prioritization list of the folks that are the most vulnerable. And so, Paula, I hope I'm hoping there's not going to be very many people outside for anybody to pick up this winter. So I think that we're going to have a much different winter in Nashville this year. We've got really concrete steps in place to really make this happen. So it's super exciting and very hopeful for the folks that aren't going to need to be picked up in a van anymore. So I'm pretty excited about that. I don't know, Judy, Abby, April, if you want to say any more about that, but we've been working hard. The providers have been working hard the last 3 months, meeting weekly, if not more than that, to get ready. And today we start. So it's pretty exciting for this day to be here. At least I'm excited. Feels like we felt like it was never going to come, and now here we are. So
I want to add one thing, and this is really why it's so critical to have that landlord search coordination. So about a month ago, we really looked at what does the transition plan look like before Open Doors will be here. Well, I have the one update, and I talked to Matt Hurd last week. I wanted to talk to him first, and talking to individually to providers. We are approaching we're doing a phase one approach, and I'm restructuring my team around Dion Trotter and also the outreach team, and probably working on getting some ESG dollars to hire one more person to start a phase one approach to have a landlord coordination outreach team. We have already every 2 weeks meetings with nonprofits that already have for years at times identified landlords and worked with landlord engagement. Abigail has reached out to THDA to look at their database that they're using, how we can utilize and how we can partner with them. So we're really looking at what do we have, and one of the things I'm working on right now is to create landlord incentive or landlord mitigation funds, what that looks like. So we're moving ahead with the concept and the model of Open Doors, but it's not going to be Open Doors coming in and taking this on right now, because we just need this needs to happen right now. That's number one. And number two, there has not been just the money to get an outside organization into our community. It's just not going to happen at the way it was initially hoped for, and it wouldn't happen in the time that we needed. So we need something now that's going on. I'm super excited of what it's already showing what we're doing on the unit side. That 200 unit is really where Dion stepped in, took on what already has been working and all the providers coordinating so that we're not stepping on each other's toes. And our role at MHID is to fill in gaps and the coordination piece with all the providers. So what Heather just said, that's exactly the conversations I hope for we can continue. The Resource Development Committee, I hope, will help start talking about how can we what do we have, what do we need, and continue these conversations beyond the 10 million ESG funds, beyond the next 2 years. That's kind of where my heart rate gets quicker in excitement. So I hope we can be contagious to all of you as well.
Well, I'm glad your heart rate is ticking fast.
And the other piece too that we just realized last week is there was a little bit more ESG dollars because the way calculations ended up around households, that we have a little bit more money that we can also utilize for landlord incentives with this ESG CV funds, which is that's not generally an ESG eligible expense, but with the CV funds it is. So we're going to have some dollars that can go toward repairs to units if that is necessary, or signing bonuses for landlords. However, we end up thinking that might help recruit landlords and provide some incentive. That's worked well in some other communities. The interesting thing about some of those risk mitigation funds is oftentimes they sit there and don't really get used. It just makes landlords feel better that they're there in case they're needed. And if we don't need them, we can allocate them to other uses. But I feel really good about this phase one that you just talked about. I think you guys are really going to be able to do this as you, right? With the people that you have, and adding some folks locally, I think is going to be a big win to continue the relationships that Dion and others have been developing there locally. So it's pretty exciting. I don't know about y'all, but I'm pretty anxious this week in general. So this is a really big bright spot for really good news for y'all. So
Anxiety? I have no idea what that means. So first, let me say that I have been so incredibly impressed with you, Heather, and your leadership in helping our area, our region, talk about these funds and how to use them, what we're doing with them, and with Susie, MDHA, and Judy. You guys have done an incredible job at making all this happen in a way that I think is going to be incredibly beneficial to our city and to our region. So I'm excited that it's about to kick off and we'll see what happens. And I too hope that this means that canvassing and people who need to be in shelters is going to look a whole lot different because of it. It's an exciting thing.
Yep, absolutely.
Anything else with the SGA? I need to jump off in a couple minutes because I'm supposed to be on a staff meeting at the moment.
I think that's a good synopsis for right now. There's always more.
Okay.
But
Yeah. Okay. Okay then. Planning Council agenda. You guys got a copy of that? It looks fine to me, unless anyone has anything else that needs to be put on it.
While we were talking, I just added Kathy Jennings under the committee reports.
I figured you did that already. Thank you, Abigail. I actually made a note on mine too. That's it.
Yeah, and then Elena, based on the report you turned in. So usually the agenda under the strategic plan, the committee updates are going to be driven on when the chairs indicate there needs to be a report. And Elena, I saw the data committee had a report request for data quality plan.
Yeah, I can reach out. I think it might be Rachel Cook who might be doing that for us.
Yeah, reached out. Yes, it's going to be one of my staff team members.
Okay,
going to do it so that be on there.
Laura, will you be on the planning council call later this month? Yes. Would you, when under committee update strategic, would you do the executive committee report, and because it's primarily and talk about the resource committee development?
I'd be happy to.
Great. Perfect. Okay. Anything else?
Paula?
Yeah.
Paula, Susie, I don't have those docs on this computer, but what about the workforce survey report, and can that be part of the data committee and see if the planning council can formally kind of bless it for posting?
Sure. If Abigail, will you put that down as an action item? We also may need to put an action item down under the tax referendum response discussion. I don't know that we'll actually be ready for a vote at that point, but we hopefully we might be. See if you just put it down as a possible action item, maybe.
Hey, Paula, just a quick clarifying question for the executive committee update. So what I'm thinking really quickly in my head is just a summary of the objectives of that research development committee, sharing our tentative goal of kicking that off in early January. And then I was going to share those kind of skills and relationships with the group, and just open, kind of open invitation to those individuals that if there's anybody that they have in mind that fits any of those criteria, that they could send that on to Judy and the team, and we would include those in our consideration for the committee.
Yes, absolutely. That sounds perfect.
Fantastic.
All right. Anything else? All right. Looks like we have an agenda. Other business real quickly. Anybody have anything pressing? All right. Sounds like we have wrapped up then. I want to say real quickly, however, that is such an adorable baby in your family now. So sweet. Thanks for sending pictures. Anna, Grandma.
I'm going to post a Halloween pic today. Yeah.
Granny.
Thank you.
Grandma.
Congratulations.
There you go. All right. Anything else? We've done a great job here. I want to say thanks again to everyone for being here today. Heather, thank you so much again for all you've done for Nashville with Judy and with Susie and all the planning that has taken place. It's been a lot. I came into some of those discussions kind of in the middle, and it was way over my head most of the time. So I just sat back and listened. So I really appreciate everything you've done. All right. If we have no further business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move.
Second.
Second.
Okay. Moved by April, seconded by Elena. All in favor of ending this meeting, please log off. See you next time.
Bye, everyone. Have a great week.